Jalen Brunson had a phenomenal 2024 to 25 season with the Knicks, building on previous great years that he's had. But could the Knicks make his life even easier going forward? We're going to review Jalen Brunson's 2024 to 25 campaign today on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome into Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And he's Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster, and the Saturday co-host of the Locked On NBA podcast. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. On today's show, we're talking about Jalen Brunson, the season that was, as we continue our player reviews, starting to look back at the season that was, start to lightly look forward to the season that will be with a new coach and I would say a whole new set of goals going into this season as far as what the definition of success will be for this team. So we're going to talk about Jalen Brunson's stats, about how easy and or not easy it was for him to get his looks, how the Knicks can potentially make things even easier on him this coming year, and things to potentially try for that, and asking some big existential questions, because why not? I mean, I feel like you should. There were some times where things got maybe a little more concerning than previous years at certain times during the playoffs in terms of Brunson being targeted and the Knicks not being able to remove him from actions on defense and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that to close the show. But first, I want to thank you all for making Locked On Knicks first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit the auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode. All right, Gavin, I'll just give the base credentials for Jalen Brunson here first. All NBA second teamer this year, an all-star again, and pretty solid averages across the board: 26 points, 7 assists, 3 boards on 49% from the field, 38% from three, 83% from the free throw line. Fairly similar to what we've come to expect from him overall statistically, but well, I guess kind of a similar year to what we have grown accustomed to seeing from him in terms of usage and how he was deployed. But I think some of that is a little on the disappointing side, considering we thought that things might change and his life might get a little easier this year with Karl Anthony Towns on the team. And I feel like as the season went on, it went from being easier for him early in the season to exactly the same level of relying on him to ISO the Knicks into winning games and whatever down the stretch of the season, and then in the playoffs, as it kind of always has been.
Yeah, it was a fascinating season where I thought he was pretty much as good as he was during that top 5 MVP run, and maybe just didn't get the same credit for it around the NBA. And then the playoffs showed some maybe even higher highs than what we've seen. Like I'll reference it later, but I think the game 4 he had against the Celtics, like given the stakes, maybe I'm forgetting one, was probably the best game he's ever played as a Knick. I think it was probably a top 5 game any Knick has ever played in any context, given how important that game was to the Knicks franchise. And then there were some lows, and we'll get into all that. But on the surface, just another fantastic season for him. 26 points, 7 assists, 3 rebounds a game, 49% from the field, 38% from three, 83% from the line. Scoring down a little bit, shooting better from the field, a little bit down from three, but overall best season from an efficiency perspective of his career, at least by points per shot attempt. He was at 1.22 points per shot attempt. That was 90th percentile in the NBA. His best effective field goal percentage in the last 4 seasons, which is basically as long as he's been playing 30 minutes per game. He remains an elite scorer inside the arc, 54% from 2. That's 83rd percentile. For a guard, he remains an elite self-creator. Alex, 29%, only 29% of his shots were assisted. That is 92nd percentile amongst guards. His assist percentage went up a bit, and I thought that was an area of fascination. I know early season we were really hyping up his passing. We were really excited about the idea that, all right, like he's going to get much more volume at the rim. And those things didn't totally come to fruition. And some of that is just who he is as a player and like limitations in terms of explosiveness and size. And the fact that he's just not, he's a solid passer for a point guard. He is not a elite passer by NBA point guard standards, even if he occasionally pulls out just ridiculous passes. He did shoot 4% better at the rim than he has in the past, which is a really significant jump. And I think indicative of the fact that Karl-Anthony Towns, even though teams obviously changed how they guarded him as the season went along, that made things more difficult on Jalen Brunson, did have a definitive positive effect on Jalen. I'll let you get into more of the numbers, but I think all of that points to just a guy who is incredibly consistent at this point, almost regardless of the context around him. And then someone, and we can get into in terms of some of the lineup data, I think compared to the regular season, just becomes infinitely more important in the playoffs. And the big existential question I have about Jalen is that the best thing for him and the best thing for the Knicks, that he becomes so important in the playoffs, like maybe more important to his team than anyone this side of Nikola Jokic, versus maybe under Mike Brown, he could be a little less involved, and that might make him better, and that might make the Knicks better. So that's kind of my big question going forward with Jalen.
Yeah, and I think that there's something to be said for he doesn't even necessarily have to be less involved per se. I think just doing less of the legwork of having to initiate every possession.
Yeah, so that's my definition of less involved. But
Yeah, exactly. So it's like he could still be getting just as many shot attempts,
Mhm.
but maybe some of them are catch and shoot. Like one of my favorite numbers, which I ironically did not pull for this particular thing, though I'll probably look it up during my next speaking break here, is the fact that he is consistently like 6 to 7% better from three when he shoots spot up threes. And I feel like that's something that we saw so little of under Tibbs the last couple years, to where I go, why was that not more of a priority? Particularly when you have, one of the things that could have made that starting lineup potentially click a little better at times would have been maybe put the ball in Josh Hart's hands, maybe put it in Mikal Bridges' hands, and let Brunson work around the perimeter. Let OG Anunoby set an off-ball screen for him or something to free him up for a 3-point shot that he just catches and shoots, rather than having to break someone down off the dribble, take a step back, work over a screen or whatever. Like he had to do so many different things just to get his looks at times that he makes it look easy, and obviously he hits all of them, and he's amazing, and that's great, and you love that he has that skill set, but you wonder if there's a world where things could be a little easier for him, and then that leaves him with a little more juice throughout the game. Um, I'm not saying that we saw times really where fatigue looked like it was a huge issue or anything this year, because I think that he's like in amazing shape, and like honestly like way more of an elite athlete in terms of just like cardio and stuff than like maybe it seems like. But like he never seems to get tired no matter what. Like it's very rare that you see him, unlike someone like Cat, for example, or like even like OG, or really like almost anyone else on the team who visibly gets tired at certain points. Brunson just kind of has that like gear where even when the going is the hardest and he's already been out there for 38 minutes, whatever, he still just has that ability to generate the shot you need and still make it, like still have enough legs under him to make it. So you love having that skill set. But I just think, just in terms of the hard numbers, you look at how much better he can be with spot up opportunities, and even just little things. Like I feel like early in the season, and this is kind of anecdotal because I don't have like a number to back this up, but like we would see a little more of like Josh Hart having the ball up top and Brunson getting a little frisky, like making a backdoor cut or something like that, and just getting an easy layup that way. Like he's just a really talented offensive player. He's a really smart basketball mind and a really good scorer. I just would like if there were more innovative ways of getting him to the point of scoring than just saying essentially like, here's the ball, Jalen, go figure it out. And I feel like just this tended to always be the case under Tibbs. They would come in with some new directive, whether Tibbs imposed or seemingly front office imposed, whatever, they would come in with some new, thought coming into the season that they would latch onto and say, this is what we're going to do this year. And then not do it as the season went on and just kind of devolve into Brunson having to carry the offense. And this year, I feel like it was like running innovative screens and, running actions that got OG and Mikhail open in the corners off of Brunson drives and off of cat pick and rolls, with Brunson. And then as the season went on, we kind of just saw that go away and just go more to just Brunson having to create for himself. And, he would have certain games where he would create well for others, but it was a little inconsistent as far as what it seemed like the motivation was for the whole team for any given game. And for that reason, I just think there needs to be, hopefully Mike Brown is that guy, but more offensive creativity and willingness to have Brunson not just be the guy on the ball at all times. I think that's going to be a big thing going forward and something that we just saw, unfortunately, a little too much of this season.
Yeah, and I think to your point, and if you want to give Tom Thibodeau an out, obviously it is much harder for Jalen Brunson to get those shots when there's not someone else who can consistently draw two off the ball and then quickly get off the ball. Cat could draw two, especially on post-ups, and then was inept largely as a passer in those situations. And then Mikal Bridges was the other guy on this team. I think you and I thought, well, he'll be able to win one-on-one. He'll be able to draw double teams. And we know he's a smart passer. We know he's chemistry with Jalen Brunson. And that did not really play out. Josh Hart, to your point, like actively became just a worse player over the course of the season. I think that was, you can't put that on Tom Thibodeau because I think it was related to the minutes and he was famously dealing with the quote unquote runner's knee. But the point is, like, if you don't have the guy I'm obviously hinting at, Julius Randle, who can rampage in, draw two, and say, here you go, Jalen, I'm going to spray it out, spoon-fed corner three, you better find ways to generate open shots. And it's hard. Like, I think Mike Brown is capable of running just schematically more sophisticated offense than Tom Thibodeau was. It is really hard to rely on that, especially in the playoffs, to get someone who is going to always have as much attention on him as Jalen Brunson really good looks. I think the cleanest way to do that, if you don't have that second creator, is to play 5 out, which is what we were talking about all year. Play with Deuce McBride, and that just gives much wider gaps for those quote-unquote substandard creators to attack space. And Jalen can maybe initially create the rotation, right, by driving and drawing a double, spray it out to Deuce. Someone unlike Josh Hart, you have to panic and close on. He can drive, make the next pass, keep the machine moving. Jalen can relocate and find a corner three that way, much like Steph Curry consistently does in Golden State. So I'm totally with you. That has to be a priority. I think it is about scheme. I think it is about running stuff. But I think the single biggest thing, unless the Knicks at some point trade for a guy who can draw double teams, and we should know Jordan Clarkson coming off the bench is someone who could do that. And if they get minutes together, that could be a way to get Jalen Brunson some threes. But if they don't trade for that guy, I think just prioritizing playing 5 shooters is the cleanest way to get him more of those shots. We're going to come back with even more numbers. I wanted to get into his playoff performance because I thought it was really fascinating. And yeah, we're going to talk a whole lot more about Jalen Brunson. How could he have an even better season next year? We get into it all next here on Locked On Knicks. But first, I want to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchup, and the app keeps it fresh with daily new promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay, something I absolutely love to do, or like I was last month at a Yankees game, watching a bet ride into the 9th inning, which just adds a little bit of extra stakes. Your heart is really beating. FanDuel makes it incredibly easy to feel like I'm part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So open the FanDuel app today or use FanDuel.com to get started. All right, what's up, guys? We are back here on Locked On Knicks. Gavin, Alex Wolf here with you. We are reviewing the season that was for Jalen Brunson. Alex, was there one other thing statistically, or if you want to skip ahead and go right to the playoffs, that really stood out to you about being like a little different in Jalen's game, or something that excited you, something that worried you, or just something that like further cemented that he's going to go down as one of the all-time great Knicks?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there was anything too surprising about his shot profile other than just that. I mean, I sort of touched on it already, but just that it didn't change much with the addition of Cat. Um, Otherwise, I think you kind of just got what you expected out of him, which is just a great, great, great scorer that can hit at all three levels, that can create his own shot at all three levels, that is really good at getting inside and drawing free throws by absorbing contact and oftentimes finishing through it. I mean, all in all, I think that it was just a pretty I don't want to say predictable, but just a what I expected out of his overall season, I would say, in general, for Brunson. But is there any number I almost feel like you maybe have something that you're thinking of, potentially as one more number that interests you? Was there something that caught your eye as well?
Well, it wasn't so much of a leading question, but I could run through some of them. I mentioned the rim finishing going up 4%. I think you and I, that was the single thing that we were most focused on coming to the year. Like, oh my God, he's been playing with Mitchell Robinson, Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, right? Like guys who all live around the basket. Like, this is going to completely change his life. And the fact that the rim frequency was only up 2% and the rim finishing was up 4%, which is like a pretty big jump. Like, he went from a below average rim finisher to a 63rd percentile rim finisher. That was good. I almost wonder, again, if the Knicks lean into 5-out, which it doesn't right now. The reporting sounds like they're going to go the direction you want to go and play a little bit more double big, which can also benefit him because you've Mitch going downhill. I hope we get some 5-out lineups, because I do think there's a world where he becomes like kind of a dominant guy at the rim, just because there's so much else you have to worry about. And to that point, his short mid-range frequency was down substantially from 2 years ago, where he used to be just incredibly reliant on that floater. 41% of his shots were floater range in 2023. This past season, just 33%. He shoots incredibly well on those shots, 52%. That's 94th percentile. He's still, I think the downside of that is he's hyper reliant on the long mid-range shots, 92nd percentile in those attempts as a total percentage of his shot diet. He shoots well enough on them. Like, he shoots 44%, which is like above average, but ideally those would become threes or would become layups. Again, I think better spacing will encourage that modern Daryl Morey style shot profile. To your point, only 4% of his shots were corner threes. That was just 21st percentile in the NBA. He was 41% from there, and it didn't affect his percentage literally at all, because his percentage was the same as his wing three percentage, because he took so little corner threes. Ideally, that goes way up. This is something I know you wanted to, I mean, we kind of just touched on the first segment, but only 30% of his total shots were from three. I do think, and let me know if you disagree on this, but I think it's something you've suggested otherwise in the past. I think 6 a game. Ideally, the number would be like 7, maybe closer to 8. I do think there are some inherent limitations there, because he's small, because he doesn't have like a Steph Curry style release, right? It's a little bit of a methodical shot. He doesn't generate power as cleanly as like a Steph or a Dame Lillard does, where their shots just look effortless time after time after time. I think it's difficult to really get his three-point volume up in the stratosphere, like where it ideally would be for someone who clearly is one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. But I kind of go back and forth on that. Where are you at on his 3-point volume, beyond just the obvious of, yeah, we want to get him some catch and shoots?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just sort of between him and Cat. I look at the numbers and I go, like, both of them, for example, shot less threes per game than OG Anunoby, and only marginally more than Mikal Bridges. And you might be like, well, you want to get OG and Mikal 3-point attempts. So like, doesn't that like track? Like, isn't that what you want, is to get those two involved in threes? Like, yes, but you look at other, I think Brunson, I mean, tell me what you think about this statement. I think Brunson is one of the maybe 3 or 4 best 3-point shooting guards in the entire NBA. Like, am I crazy for saying that?
Yeah, that's a little high for me. I'd probably have him 10 to 20, somewhere in that, maybe 10 to 15. If you're saying point guards and two guards, I'd say like 10 to 15 probably.
Okay. I mean, but I think based off what we've seen and the fact that he puts up the percentages and he does it on volume and he create his own and all that stuff, I think he should be closer to like 8 or 9 a game, if I'm being
Sure.
honest. Like I want
Yeah.
him throwing them up like at the same rate of like what did Edwards put up this year? Like
He
Anthony
could put out, he
Edwards,
was shooting crazy. He was shooting like 9 or 10 a game, I think.
he was shooting 10.3 threes per
Yeah.
game. So somewhere between current Jalen Brunson and Anthony Edwards. So
Mhm.
around like 8 threes per game, I think is pretty reasonable. And if they're not all his, if he doesn't take 8, then like I want to see Cat taking more or whatever. It's just like those two are so deadly from that range. And I feel like they were both Cat more so than Brunson. So maybe giving away a little bit into what we'll talk about in our Cat review tomorrow. But I think that both of them, the focus just shifted further and further away from shooting the most valuable in the sport for both of them as the season went on. When I really felt like the focus should have been finding more ways to generate more of those shots for them as the season went on, because I think that that is the tool to potentially blow a game open. It's it's the weapon of the modern NBA. It's like so often the Knicks do kind of show up to still to this day, kind of show up to a gunfight with a bat. And sometimes they act quick and they just beat up the person with the gun with the bat. But other times, you find yourself saying, like, man, why does every game have to come down to the last couple possessions? And it's like because the Knicks just were grinding away for like every single game, and like they managed to make some timely threes when they had to, whatever. But I do think more volume needs to happen. Like just as a team overall, they ended up not terribly high, I believe, in this year's just overall like 3-point attempts per game. Let me just get a look at that real quick. Overall 3-point attempts per game, they were 27th in the NBA this year. Like it's just as a team, I think they need to work to be closer to the middle of the pack next year, which would put them at like, I don't know, 37 per game. So like another like 3-4 attempts per game, whether those come from Brunson, whether those come from Cat, whatever. I think they just have to prioritize doing that because they have so much 3-point scoring talent. They just need to find ways to get them involved. I think. And Brunson, this is more talk about the whole team, but I just think that Brunson is the most talented player on the team, and I think finding more ways to get those shots for him, A, is easier on his body, less potential risk for injury of him having to throw himself into traffic all the time and whatever. But then B, it's a more efficient shot, and they have the guys that have the percentages to back up that if you generate more of those shots for them, they should be able to convert them. So I think Brunson is just kind of like proof positive of how I feel about that whole thing.
Yeah, my final thought on this is I said it before, but I think there are physical limitations there, but I think those physical limitations get exacerbated when he's playing 36 minutes. And I think the stat was during the regular season, he had the ball in his hand 9 minutes a game, and that was far and away the highest total in the NBA. Maybe that was in the playoffs, but I'm pretty sure Chris Herring had that in the regular season. Like we didn't see the injury, we didn't see the workload cause a ton of injuries for him. But I think like so many other guys in this Knicks team, you saw it come out in bad decision-making at times on both ends of the floor. You saw it come out in tired legs at the end of games or even at the beginning of games at times. And Jalen Brunson, like even outside of the injury this year, like he shot way worse the second half of the year. I'm gonna try to see if I have the pre and post All-Star splits up. He was 40% from three the first half of the year. And there's an important caveat on this is with the ankle injury, he only played 12 games post All-Star break, but he was only 33% from three post All-Star break. And he bounced back in the playoffs. He was 35% from, I think 35% from three in total in the playoffs. I will double check that. Point is, like, I do think there was a real effect from just the borderline unique usage Jalen Brunson has had the last 3 years. And I think beyond just like the 5 out, being able to get him more threes, you bring those minutes down, you just bring his time on the ball down. You bring his high leverage minutes down. I think that percentage goes up. And I think he has the legs to shoot more threes and shoot more pull-ups. Like we were talking about early in his Knicks career, he was practicing like at the Knicks practice facility. They had, I believe they still have, a 4-point line, and Jalen was consistently shooting from there. And I remember in the preview we did for him last year, we were openly wondering, is that going to become part of his game? Like the dribble in 26, 27, 28 footer. And he would, like, especially when he was on a heater, he would take and make those shots. I remember, I think it was the Pelicans game in, like, I want to say January or February, where he made just 4 or 5, like 26 plus foot threes. Like, he can get hot. He can make that shot. I do think in a world, Alex, where his workload goes down substantially, that can become a more consistent part of his game. And that's a way he can get easy open threes, because defenses are not used to having to guard him from Steph range or shout out our guy Dante DiVincenzo range. When we come back, let's talk playoffs a little bit. Let's talk if we have any big concerns with Jalen Brunson going forward. All that next right here on Locked On Knicks. All right, what's up, guys? We are back here on Locked On Knicks. Alex, I'll throw it right over to you. You just heard me preface it. What did you think of his postseason? What, if anything, and it could be stuff we already talked about, but what are kind of your biggest concerns, or maybe even like biggest areas of excitement where Jalen can get even better going forward?
I mean, postseason wise, what more can you say? He had all in all, warts and all, a phenomenal postseason. I think there were. I'll get to it in my concerns part, I guess, which has more to do with him and Cat as a pairing than just him in general. But there was a couple things that maybe came up that could make you go, certainly people in our YouTube comments being like, Brunson's not the one. He's not going to be the one to lead the Knicks to a champion, whatever. I don't buy any of that. I think that he could for sure be the top player on a championship team. I think that, you just have to build the right team around him. But for a fact that, like, if you need a bucket late in the game, as long as you can keep it close, he is most likely going to get it for you. I mean, obviously the shot against Asar Thompson at the end of the Pistons series, just one of the best moments in Knicks history, period. But certainly, I mean, definitely the biggest moment probably of maybe the last 25 years, other than obviously like actually making it to the Eastern Conference Finals again for the first time in 25 years. But that kind of just came punctuated by a giant romp against Boston, against a depleted Boston, no less. So it's like, that one, yeah, it was fun as hell. But the more impressive shot and moment and memorable thing that I'll be thinking about is that shot on Thompson going forward. And then just some really fantastic games, like you have mentioned a couple times already, but like the game 4 against Boston, 39 points, 12 assists on 14 of 25 shooting, shot 4 of 8 from 3 in that game. Just an insane game for him. 18 and 7 just in the third quarter alone in that one. So that was a game that the Knicks really needed to, just take that commanding lead in that series, that 3-1 lead. It felt like, I mean, I don't want to be presumptuous, but like if they lost that game, and then obviously the Tatum injury plays into this as well. But, if they had lost that game and Tatum doesn't get hurt, the Knicks perhaps don't make the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, they needed that game. He came through huge for them. And then had some huge scoring performances against the Pacers, but that was maybe where it was one of the first real times where you started looking and saying like, oh, here's some of the defensive concerns. And like the Pacers managed to isolate him a lot on defense. That's kind of where some of my, I don't want to call it concerns, but like big questions come from, with like how Mike Brown might be able to treat him going forward, and sort of hide him on defense, but mostly just like get him out of the main action, which Indy was great at doing. Like, I don't think Brunson's actually a bad defender, because bad, when implied, does not try to me. And he tries, and he actually plays, I think, passing lanes pretty well and has his moments. But, there's just, you can't have him involved in every action on defense and have him running every play on offense. It's not sustainable. But before we get too much more into that, I mean, I'll give you the stage just to talk about the playoffs in general before we kind of get into like the just, I guess, our only concerns potentially going forward with him. But all in all, just, I think this playoffs was another example of him just kind of showing why he's that guy.
Yeah, I agree with you in general. I do think I mean, it was particularly concerning in the first 2 games against the Pistons, and then he course corrected, but like just the it was obvious that his teammates were frustrated with him and some of the shots he was taking, and he was very clearly trying to be the hero. And I kind of thought, like, because there have been moments like that, right, in the past. And in his defense, like especially his first playoff run in 2023, like he just had zero help, right? Like that was completely necessary. 2024 with all the injuries, it was also kind of completely necessary, and he threw the Superman cape on. I was very confident that he kind of had the basketball IQ and the self-awareness to say, all right, like this isn't that team. Like I don't have to do that anymore. And yet they were just dumb shots and frustrating shots. And they were just so reliant on him in the playoffs. Like in the regular season, he had a negative net rating, right? Like maybe we should have mentioned this earlier. They were minus 4.2 when he was on the court in the regular season, which I guess I have to look back, but I don't think was the case in either of his first 2 years. And I feel like he was strongly a positive in his first 2 years. And a big part of that was they were only 2 points better on offense when he was on the floor. Like it felt like in some ways Cat drove their offensive success in the regular season much more than in the playoffs. And in the playoffs, Alex, they were 15 and a half points better offensively when he was on the floor. And obviously it's a different style, right? Like the half court game like favors him and encourages you to lean in onto him. And on the surface, that is a really good stat. But I think that's a stat that was a little bit of an indictment on the Knicks roster and the lack of creation outside of him. And that's not Tom Thibodeau's fault. But I do think it was also an indictment on Tom Thibodeau and the fact that like for 3 straight years now, the offense in the playoffs has been give Jalen Brunson the ball and clear out. And at times it's hard to tell, like, all right, is that Tibbs like wanting to run like Neanderthal offense? Or is that Jalen Brunson just saying, I'm the star, this is how I want to play? And it's an ego trip. And I will say in his defense, I thought as the playoffs got on, he balanced that really well. Like we saw the way against Boston in particular. I always think back to that game too. Mikal Bridges has Drew Holiday on him, who's like arguably like if you talk to NBA players, still like one of the 3 or 4 scariest perimeter defenders in the league. And over again, Brunson saying, "Hey, Mikal, take the ball, go cook. I'm confident in you." And that won the next game too. And even at times when he was struggling against Boston, against Detroit, like he was still one of the 2 or 3 scariest guys in the entire NBA at the end of those games in the biggest moments. And for me, like that is the bottom line for him offensively. Defensively, they were far worse when he was on the floor. Like a lot of the numbers point to the fact that he was the bigger concern defensively, not Karl Anthony Towns in the playoffs. And I thought Indiana really, really exposed him, to your point, on that end of the floor. And the Knicks were trying to run just like this dumb hedge and recover thing with him. Instead of switching him, where he held up shockingly well, switching against the Boston Celtics, he was exposed over and over and over again in hedge and recover against the Indiana Pacers. And that really, really hurt the Knicks in that series, his inability to cover ground. And at times just, again, I think some of this is related to the workload, but just a lack of urgency from him on the defensive end of the floor. That was really frustrating. Offensively, it's hard to nitpick 31, 6, and 3 on 50, 35, 92 splits, which is what he had against the Pacers. Still, I think at times some of the decision-making offensively was not great, and he was trying to do it all himself. Overall, he's an offensive genius. He's like these last 3 years are up there in NBA history in terms of playoff scoring at volume and at solid efficiency. Like the list is just very, very short of the players who did it in the past. The Knicks have a transcendent talent in Jalen Brunson. It is just about calibrating it the right directions.
Yeah, and I'll just close by saying, as far as the defense goes, I do think that, to your point, the Knicks, like, they would figure something out, and for the most part, that was switching.
Mhm.
And I think, I'm with you. I think that Brunson, even when he would end up on, like, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, whatever, like, he held up okay. Like, that's what they would try to get, and he would hold up well enough that then you could say, "Okay, this is a fine enough result that, like, we don't need to take him off the floor. We could still generate a better look on the other side," like, whatever. But once they started going back to the hedge and recover and having Cat like play drop again for whatever reason against a better shooting team in the next round, like it just made no sense at all. I hope that with Mike Brown, and I haven't really looked to see what defenses he ran or how much experimentation he did, but you would think that with almost every other team in the NBA trying zone from time to time and stuff like that, I think that's actually something that can make Brunson's life way easier every once in a while. Throw a zone look out there let them play a 2-3, let Brunson just cover an area of the court. And again, like, utilize the fact that he actually has pretty good hands on defense. And like, I think he has good instincts in passing lanes. Like, find ways to work that in. And then all of a sudden, the defensive stuff becomes less of an issue than when you just have him in man defense. You're trying to tell him to like get over a screen or whatever. And like, that's just not what he does. And then it's like, you're not having the center show enough. So then you're either giving up too wide open of a shot or whatever. It was not pretty. It was, and they got really exposed by Indy, and the fact that Indy was then using like off ball actions to get Brunson on who they wanted to start the action, usually Halliburton, and then just bringing Cat in there, hook, line, and sinker. Like, they have to do better of scheming against that sort of stuff too. If you're asking me how to do it, I couldn't really tell you, if I'm being completely honest. All I can do is see the problem. I don't know if I have the answers. Hopefully Mike Brown does have the answers and is able to do that. But all in all, phenomenal season for Jalen Brunson. Another one to add to his already illustrious career with the Knicks. Hopefully next season takes it one step further, gets to the NBA Finals, perhaps wins one. That would be pretty cool. But till then, all we can do is sit here and wait and see what the Knicks do to fill out the rest of this roster, and keep talking about it more until October. So we'll be here for you every step of the way with that. We'll be back tomorrow with a Karl-Anthony Towns player review as well, going over his season that was. But until then, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.